Hello. I've been asked to speak about using narrative beginnings in our work as narrative inquirers. Um, so, what I will say is that um, you often find narrative beginnings written as text in theses and dissertations. They're not something that you typically have in a journal article because of the length of the articles. Um, but as a narrative inquirer, it's important to understand what your narrative beginnings are in terms of framing your research interests, your inquiry into something. So, for example, for me, when I did my dissertation on the knowledge of children, my narrative beginning was about a moment I recalled as a child in grade one going up a very large hill behind the school I attended that was out of bounds. And a group of us children climbed up that hill. It was called Pirates Hill. We were expecting that if there was pirates, then there'd be treasure. It was also a time of rabies, so we were all very scared and cautious about animals with rabies. Anyways, make a long story short, we traversed the hill, we wandered back down, and we came back after recess was over, and all of the teachers were standing outside waiting for us. So what that story did for me was help me think about the things that children need to learn at school to be able to be successful in school. So I took knowledge and I fractured into various pieces and interviewed different children about their experiences with certain kinds of knowledge in schools: narrative knowledge, embodied knowledge, nested knowledge. But that narrative beginning, which I shared actually in a response group, which is very important, I think, helped me think about what I wanted to do in terms of the children. In other research that I've done, specifically looking at working with Indigenous populations, I recounted another story from when I was a child older. So I was in grade one on the first one, fast forward to grade six. And my father, who was a social worker in town, stopped to pick up two Indigenous girls. It was cold. He was doing the right thing. We were late for school once again. And I was embarrassed. We would arrive at school with these two girls who were marginalized significantly in the class I was in. They were also in my class. I often use that narrative beginning when I'm thinking about marginalized people and my reactions to them, because, well, I feel guilty about it in a certain sense. It's also a moment of tension that I need to inquire into to understand relationships and the experiences of marginalized people and the experiences of people who are in the process of marginalizing them. So I've had students write various kinds of narrative beginnings. Cindy Clark did an amazing award-winning dissertation where she wrote poetry. She's a poet. And so she tells a story, a narrative reconstruction, that of her life as a child on the margins of a muskeg, which is a big boggy place of water in northern Saskatchewan, and also on the margins of the highway they went through. Her parents had a store and a gas station. So she uses that to position herself in terms of understanding the experience of marginalization. I've had other students write little vignettes about various moments that have happened in their past, some when they were children and some when they were teachers themselves. And sometimes those people don't write just one narrative beginning, they write a few vignettes. And those vignettes set the context for their research. And this speaks to the need for a personal justification when we're doing our work. So what happens for students and for myself is that the narrative beginning helps us think about what our research wonder is and anchors the research in ourselves. And I think that's important because it's kind of what sustains us in our work as we're doing the inquiry, that we are personally connected to the research that we have. Now, a great book is Engaging in Narrative Inquiry, and the beginning of it has the narrative beginning of Marilyn Huber, who wrote an award-winning dissertation as well. And what she does is she talks about a couple of narrative beginnings and how that situates her. And then Jean Clendinen writes a subsequent chapter where she talks about Marilyn's narrative beginnings. What's important is that we don't just write a narrative beginning. We don't just tell a story. We have to inquire into the story, because inquiring into the story makes it more alive and gives it some legs, so to speak. And so we talk about unpacking, or you might want to use the word analysis. So you analyze, unpack your narrative beginning, and that leads you to your research wonder. So a reader should see an obvious connection between what your narrative beginning is and the research wonder that you come to. They help frame the inquiry. They help give the reader a context, and then you move into unpacking that. And one of the ways that we unpack that is we attend to the three-dimensional narrative inquiry space. We consider the temporality of the moment, the sociality of the moment, and the place, and then also the movement of the researcher in that, the forwards and backwards in time, the inwards and outward. What are my intrinsic thoughts and feelings? What are my extrinsic experiences? And how are those all encapsulated in the narrative beginning, which then sets up your research project and the subsequent inquiry that you engage in. Thanks very much.